just going to put in a shameless plug for anyone that's like, I would love to dig more into some of these concepts, and specifically how it applies to Midland. I encourage you to look up the Voices of Black Midland Oral History Project. So it is oral histories that have been collected from, starting the collection was happening right around after the murder of George Floyd. But it's from the first Black resident, right, who is here, because we are lucky that we still have some of these individuals living in our community, but also from high school students who lived through that time. It's very recent history, and it's very hard to listen to. And I think we need to be really mindful of that, right? Also, Jen was a huge piece of that project here. You can listen to her story on there, and probably some other members in this room. But it's just a very interesting way for us to kind of think about Midland. Right? Here where we live. This is our history, but also through a lens of people who have really had some experiences that as a white person, I have not had, right? I have had a very different lived experience here in Midland, and so that's that facing it, right? How do we face it, how do we acknowledge it, so that we can grow from and perhaps make some different decisions moving forward. So you can access that online, but also we're doing a listening series in April, so Voices of Black Midland, look it up. It's like podcasts, but it's oral history, so you can listen. Thank you.
I found this evening to be quite interesting, sometimes triggering, and had many perspectives. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my father lived to be over 100 years old. So I've heard lots and lots of stories, but I know that people fear the things that they don't understand. And they operate in ways that aren't characteristic of them if they don't understand them. If you listen to people that live in other countries tell the stories of the history of the United States, they're going to be quite different. Because history is spun from the people that have power. History is spun by people that want a particular thing. So we have to take into consideration who's telling the story and judge it by that. You asked the question, what do we know? Every time I go in to give blood, I ask, do you know how a blood bank got started? Charles Richard Drew was a surgeon, he was a black doctor who wanted to be a surgeon. And they would not allow him to become a surgeon because he was black. But he was given the task of figuring out how to preserve blood during World War I. He created a way to store plasma. Not one person knew that. I can tell you stories because my mother made sure that every time I had a report to write, I was writing about somebody that achieved something that was of color. Because I didn't learn that in the schools that I went to. I went to an all-white school. I got bused, and the perspectives that I saw and heard were quite different. But my mother made a point to make sure that I knew who I was so that I had a reason to strive for good things that I could, and there were people that looked like me that had done that before me. Lastly, there is hope. There's always hope. If we're willing to engage with one another, to listen, and to learn, we can move forward. We can do better.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I want to, I really appreciate you for sharing that. I remember when I was younger, my mother, who was back there, during Black History Month, she would put little index cards up all over the house to show me different things that were in the house that were invented by people that looked like me. And I remember that that's how I learned a lot about, inventions and the contributions that we gave back to society, because she would have these little index cards up all over the house. And so I appreciate her for doing that. It really made me want to learn more about history and invention. So thank you, Mommy.
What I wanted to say was, I think a lot of the problems in the United States and probably everywhere are the problem that a lot of things happen because of money. People wanting more and more money and power. And then also, we have a really big problem still with the white supremacy stuff, which makes me sick thinking about it. And I don't know how that can ever stop, but I'm in this book club group, and we just read the book, Fever in the Heartland, and it's about the Ku Klux Klan. But I never knew back in the 20s they were taking over America. So Michigan was full of Ku Klux Klans, and Indiana. It's like, we don't know about that. We talk about the Holocaust and stuff, but we never talk about that. And I don't know. It's just like what's going on now with these ICE. They're just Ku Klux Klan with a different outfit on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that, Alex, go ahead. No, I want you to.
Sure. One interesting fact about Bulgaria when I was in high school. I went to the English language high school where I learned the language from people from Great Britain, by the way. Mr. Logan taught me my first English lessons. And one of the things that we learned, and you might be surprised, was a portion of a speech that was given back in the 1960s. Now, the reason they wanted us to read it and memorize some of it was because they wanted to see how evil America was, how racist, how inherently bad the enemy, the capitalist system is. And so we read I Have a Dream. And to this day, I, of course, remember and sometimes with my students when similar issues pop up, I remind them, well, don't judge the people by the color of their skin. Judge them as individuals by the content of their character. And so that's the only way we can accomplish what you are hoping for. That we will stop seeing the color, stop seeing the least significant thing about you and me and everybody in this room and everyone around the world is how much melanin is in the skin cells of your body. This is the least important thing about you. And none of us, regardless of how dark or light the shade of the skin that we wear for a time while we are on this side of the grave, I'm a big believer, I'm a classical liberal. That means someone who embraces principles such as personal responsibility. So we have a responsibility. As Christians, of course, we are called to a much higher standard than the secular understanding of personal responsibility. We are called to love everyone the way Christ loved everybody, including their enemies. But don't burden yourself with guilt as a Christian about what Peter did to Paul 2,000 years ago, because they were Christian and you're Christian and you have to now bear some kind of a guilt. You didn't do any of those things. Yes, love everyone, love your enemies. That is the hardest part. But you can't be a Christian unless you try at least.
And I think the biggest part about that too is going back to like feeling bad about history and what people did in the past. Instead of looking at it as I feel bad that this happened, yes, you can still feel the empathy, but instead look at it from the perspective of how can I learn from this and how can I change my actions so I don't make the same mistake.
And I just want to add that, I think there is so much beauty in us looking at people and honoring who they are, right? And Alex, I appreciate what you said. And I think in addition to that, it's okay for us to say like, we're black, right? Are you white or white? And I mean, it's okay for us to say who we are, right? I think that we don't have to be in denial of who we are to still appreciate each other, right? I think that's the beauty in it, that we can say it's okay for us to be diverse. It's okay for us to have different backgrounds or perspectives. I think when we try to kind of put us all in together, that's where I feel fail each other sometimes. It's okay for me to be curious about your background and learn more about yours. Are we supposed to judge people based on that? No. But can we embrace it and honor it? Yes. I think that is our superpower when we do that. And when we act like it's not, those differences are not there, then that's when I think we kind of feel each other. But
someone asked about the 250th anniversary. One of the things that we have planned for in the state of Michigan, let me back up. I chair Governor Whitmer's Black Leadership Advisory Council, and as part of the Office of Global Michigan, the ethnic commissions are all getting together and just planning part of the cultural preservation subcommittee. And so what we have been talking about and discussing, one is identifying those themes that kind of bring us together, or are those hero stories. And one that I really love, and I suggested, is just the powerful history that we have in the state of Michigan from the abolitionist movement, where people, across different races and also across economic lines were able to come together around a common cause. And that's one of those stories that I think that we can celebrate and honor and just talk about history. And now it's, depending on whose side you look at, maybe people have different meanings, but we do know that there was an underground railroad. It didn't have a train.
Trains were used sometimes.
They were. Garbage brothers as well. Yes. And they were. But so another thing that we're doing is because we want people to learn about other people's cultures. And so we've began to put together kind of a toolkit for different cultural groups to talk about, what were the experiences of my group during these 250 years, or at least since when did Michigan? Well, since Michigan was.
He knew not to look at me. I don't know dates.
But yeah, so there are opportunities for
1820 something.
Yeah. Yeah, War of Toledo.
Toledo's its own problem.
I know, but I still love the War of Toledo. We got the Upper Peninsula. Sorry. But there are opportunities for us to, find ways to learn about other folks. I encourage us to have that curiosity. I think when I come to Midland, I come to these events, I get even more excited because I see the work being done. I see the individuals in here who are longing, if I may say, for connections and to learn. So even use this room tonight as an example. So we may debate whether or not this event happened. But for the conspiracy theorists in here, just say it happened and talk about your experience. Talk about the people you sat next to, what you learned in this time, and allow it to expand your curiosity.
I appreciate all of this. We are getting close to our closing time, but I have one last question for the panel. Like I mentioned earlier, 50 years from now, it's really interesting seeing what's happening right now in the world as a whole, not only in the world, but, in our nation, even in Michigan and even in our Tri-City area. It's a lot of infighting. It's a lot of things going on. And I want to ask you all, what do you all think people will say about us 50 years from now? How do you think generations of children down the line will reflect on this moment in time, right? We are in it right now, so it's hard for us to really see all the stuff, but from someone looking in, what do you all think they'll say about us, how we treat each other, how we showed up for each other, how we fought each other? What do you all think? What do you think they will say?
So I think that people will talk about us 50 years from now in the same ways in which, I think in similar ways in which we talk about the past. I think they will find a speech, and they'll have their children recite that speech because it'll be one that will bring us together. You know, it'll be a I have a dream speech of the current moment. We will talk about, I think that there'll be people that will talk about, despite the tragedies that we've gone through, that we continue to prevail. I also think I do think people will look at some of the coalitions and collaborations that happen. Now that's if we get through 2026. I also think that they will be shocked. They're like, they were still walking. Like they had the Jetsons in the 70s, and they're still like they still use their feet. Like I feel like that's one thing that I hope they'll say.
Well, I mean, I hope. I think some of this. It's obviously we're a very American perspective, but this is almost a foreign conversation in most other countries because they're so ethnically centric as a place. And so sometimes we're like, man, America, we feel like America's more racist or more caught up in this stuff than other countries. And someone is like, yeah, because they don't have hardly anyone of different races. So we are forced to have tough conversations because we have people not just of different races, but also different ethnicities that came at different times and kind of became part of this melting pot. And I just think that's a good thing. I don't think tough conversations because of that part of it are a bad thing. I hope what people get to is more towards judging people by their character, even if your race and your ethnicity is a very, very important part of your life. And so what I mean by that is I'm a white male, Alex is a white male, but we have almost nothing in common. Yep. As a first generation that grew up with that story is so radically different than a boy who grew up in rural Illinois as a second, whose great grandfather was here. And so if I think what people get is they don't like being lumped of like, I see you and now I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions about your background. People of any race and gender and background don't like that. They like to generally be seen as I have my independent thoughts. So I hope what they say is your ethnicity and your race is a very important part of your history. And I hope it's like, oh, that's interesting. I want to learn about that, about you as an individual, but I'm not going to make a bunch of bad assumptions about you because of it.
I don't think we can really predict what's going to happen based on what has happened. So that's okay. But
she can't even agree on the past.
I know, okay. But if, this moment, there is something happening right now, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. I do think that the United States is going to be in a different position globally. And that doesn't mean I'm saying doom and gloom. I'm just saying, based on everything, all the factors on the ground, I do think the quote unquote American century is over and something new is being created. But I don't know what that means. And that's kind of like why historians, we like distance. We're like, the journalists do their thing and then we go correct the record later, because you need some distance, you need perspective to be able to understand what that meant, because it is about what it meant, like why we care, why we're still talking about it, why some things are talked about and others aren't. And there are a lot of factors that we've covered today, so I don't know. And it's really hard for me to say because I want that distance, but I feel like I can safely say the United States' position in the world will look different.
I just hope it's a story of hope. I hope it's a story that people look back on and they say these people learned so many things and went through so many different experiences, and they say how we prevailed and we were able to find that human connection and we were able to come through together and find the ways to agree to disagree. I think specifically, especially because it was a very common topic in school, like about the Super Bowl performance with Bad Bunny. And so many people saying, oh, I didn't like it because he's Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is part of America, in case you didn't know. And I just think about the other halftime show that was held. I'm so interested to see how people look at it as in, okay, these things happened, and how did people react? And after those events happened, how did people come together to then learn from those experiences?
I chose to come to America and become an American, so I hope you're not right. I bet everything, my whole future, my children's future, my grandchildren's future, on you being wrong here.
Okay, I take
the
it back.
best is yet to come for America. And I believe that it is if we, despite our disagreements on almost everything, that we can unite, because America's strength is in unity. That we can unite behind a set of values that are universal, but it's America who brought them to the rest of the world as ideals to be held and to be celebrated. And so if we preserve those foundational values, regardless of the flaws of all the founding fathers, I think the best is yet to come. I'm very optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I would be going to, I don't know, New Zealand maybe next.
All right, I hope that the next generation will remember my generation and say that we were the great equalizers. And I say that because we are a generation that's not afraid to have the hard conversations, even when we're uncomfortable. That we were people that are not afraid of the education, because education is a great equalizer. We have the courage to teach. We have the courage to lead and own our truth and live in the truth of our history, even if it's the parts that we're not so proud of. And that we have voice, we have choice, and we don't allow silence. We don't live in silence just to protect our comfort zone, but we work on building capacity. So I hope that we be known as the great equalizers.
Well, I want to say our time is coming to an end. This is always the hard part because, I feel like around this time is when we start to get a little bit more comfortable. Oh, sorry, I just like to talk to people. This is when we start to get a little bit more comfortable with each other. And this is a time where we start to get a little bit more open. And then this is a time when it has to come to an end. And so in our efforts with this, we always encourage people to continue these conversations. This is not the end here. We don't give you a solution here. We want you to continue doing it and broadening these conversations because they are so important. And try to talk to people that you don't normally talk to, right? I mean, I think that's what we try to do even at this table is bring people together that may not ever cross paths. And it's so important for us to do this. So in closing, I'm going to thank Faith Ministries Church for hosting this event, being a venue here, allowing us into their space. We are always so appreciative when we are able to come into a new space. So thank you so much. Yes, for all your hospitality and love, which is no surprise. And I also want to thank our guests at the table. I appreciate you guys for being brave and having hard conversations. And I know we could have went a lot deeper, but y'all was playing a little safe, but that's okay. But I appreciate you all so much for taking your time to come out here and share your voice and your experiences with us. It is so important for us to have conversations. It's so important for us to be open to listening to other people when they have conversations. So I appreciate you guys for that. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to just share that, when Faith Ministries came and asked about this conversation, I was really excited about it because we don't talk about history a lot, and we do kind of brush over things. And so I really am appreciative that this conversation was brought to light and that we were able to do this. Of course, I want to thank the best team in the world. Yes. The TVBB team. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. I mean, I come to them and I say, hey, we're doing this. Can you meet me there? And everybody just shows up with so much enthusiasm and heart for people and community. And they come from all over. So I appreciate you guys so much for doing that. Thank you. Yes. There's no way I could do this by myself. I would try, but I can't do it by myself. And so I appreciate that. And then I want to thank you all for coming out. I mean, you all, we put the call out and you guys came, and it's because you care about your community. It's because you care about people around you. And because you care, you said, you know what, I want to come and listen, maybe share my voice, or just, like I said, at least listen. We have to learn to listen to each other so that we can connect better and grow empathy and emotional intelligence to be able to continue this time together that we have. I mean, this is a gift to be able to be amongst the living, and we should honor it by appreciating people who are walking alongside us. So I will not preach there. I will. So thank you guys. Let's clap for our community. For yourself, clap for yourself. And so I always try to end with a closing, just to bring us back together as we end here. And so I'm going to say, and I write it down so I stay on track so I don't just start talking. If tonight made you uncomfortable, good. Not because discomfort is the goal, but because discomfort is often where growth begins. History does not disappear when we erase it. It does not soften when we omit it. It does not heal when we silence it. It waits. If tonight proved anything, is this: history is not fragile, but our willingness to face it sometimes is. The good parts of our story deserve to be remembered, but so do the painful parts. Because growth does not come from selective memory, it comes from reflection. Erasure doesn't heal, silence doesn't mature a society, avoidance doesn't prevent repetition. The question was never just, should history be shared? The deeper question is, what kind of future are we shaping if we choose not to? We cannot change the past, but we are actively writing what will be studied next. And one day, someone will ask about us. What did they see? What did they ignore? What did they have the courage to confront? What do they celebrate? And what did they celebrate? Who were they? What did they create? May we be a generation that chooses honesty over comfort, curiosity over fear, and growth over denial. May we be a generation that chooses humanity. Thank you for sitting at the table, and thank you for having this conversation. I appreciate you guys.